is something deeply powerful about the way we choose to believe. It's invisible, but it determines almost everything we do. You see it every day in how someone walks into a room, how they shake your hand, how they speak about a challenge they're facing. Belief isn't about having evidence. It's about carrying a posture, an attitude that says, I'm going to act as if things are going to work out even when there's no proof yet. And that belief, that mindset, shapes behavior more than circumstances ever could. Think about this. Two people are faced with the same challenge. One believes they'll fail, the other believes they'll figure it out. Same problem. Two completely different responses. The first hesitates. They second guess. They avoid. The other leans in. They ask questions. They try things. They adapt. It's not that the second person is smarter or more talented. It's that they've already made a decision in their mind. This will work out, I just need to keep moving. And that belief changes how they behave. It fuels persistence, it fuels clarity, it fuels progress. We're often told to be realistic, as if realism is the same thing as resignation. But when people say be realistic, what they usually mean is don't expect too much. But I think that's a trap. Because the moment we lower our expectations to match our fears, our actions follow. When you believe something isn't possible, you stop trying, you stop exploring, you stop innovating. Not because the door is locked, but because you stop turning the handle. Belief isn't naive, it's strategic. It's the foundation of initiative. The best performers in the world, athletes, artists, leaders, they all operate from a deep internal belief that they're capable of rising to the moment. They don't wait for confidence to show up. They act first. Confidence follows action. It's built, not born. And belief is what allows you to take that first step, to act without the guarantee. I met someone recently who was navigating a difficult career transition. He had lost his job, had no clear path forward, and felt completely stuck. But then something shifted. Not externally. He didn't suddenly get a job offer or win the lottery. What changed was how he chose to approach the uncertainty. He told me, I'm going to treat this like the best thing that ever happened to me, even though it doesn't feel like that yet. That one sentence changed everything. He started networking differently. He showed up to interviews with more energy. He created opportunities instead of waiting for them to appear. 3 months later, he was in a role that wasn't just better. It was a perfect fit. But it didn't happen because of luck. It happened because of belief. When you act as if everything always works out for you, you start making decisions based on possibility, not fear. That doesn't mean you'll never feel afraid. It means you don't let fear dictate your choices. You learn to trust the process, to trust your resilience. You don't need to see the full path to start walking. You just need to believe the next step will lead somewhere worth going. There's a quiet power in people who move forward without certainty. They walk differently, not arrogantly, but with a kind of quiet resolve. It's magnetic. Others are drawn to them. Not because they have all the answers, but because they seem anchored. They're not reacting to every storm. They've made peace with the unknown. They've decided in advance that things will work out. So they carry that decision with them into every room, every meeting, every set. And here's what's interesting. When you behave as if everything always works out, it often does. Not because the universe bends to your will, but because your belief leads you to behave in ways that create better outcomes. You show up. You stay longer. You keep the conversation going. You listen more deeply. You experiment more often. People like working with people like that. Doors open more easily for people who knock more often. It's not magic. It's behavior rooted in belief. We all carry stories in our minds. Narratives about who we are, what we're capable of, what we deserve. Some of those stories were written by other people. By teachers who doubted us, by bosses who overlooked us, by parents who projected their own fears onto us. But here's the truth. You get to rewrite the story. You get to decide what belief you carry into the world, and that belief will shape how you move and how the world moves in response. Acting as if everything always works out for you isn't about arrogance or delusion. It's about grounded optimism. It's about saying, no matter what happens, I'll find a way through this. I'll learn. I'll grow. I'll become stronger. And that's not pretending. That's preparing. That's choosing to believe in your capacity to rise even when the ground feels shaky. The people who inspire us most are never the ones who had it easy. They're the ones who kept going when things didn't make sense. The ones who chose belief in the face of uncertainty. They acted as if, not because they knew they'd succeed, but because they knew who they were wouldn't quit. That's what we remember. That's what moves us. So next time you face something uncertain, something unclear, remember, the most important decision isn't what you do, it's what you believe. Because belief shapes behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. Choose wisely. Choose to act as if it's all working in your favor, because the moment you do, you've already changed the game. We are storytellers, all of us. Whether we realize it or not, every day we're telling ourselves a story about who we are, what's possible, and how the world works. And the thing is, our brains believe it, not because it's true, but because it's familiar. Because we've said it enough times. This isn't just poetic, it's biological. Our brains are wired for narrative. They're constantly trying to make sense of the world, to create coherence. When something happens, good or bad, the brain asks, what does this mean? And depending on the story we're already telling ourselves, we'll give it a very different answer. Two people can experience the exact same situation. One says, see, nothing ever works out for me. The other says, this is just a detour, something better is coming. One person spirals, the other adjusts. Same reality, different interpretation. The difference isn't the situation, it's the story. And what's most important to understand is this: the story comes first. Behavior follows. The way we think influences the way we act, and the way we act influences the results we get. It's a cycle, and it starts with the words we repeat in our own minds. The brain doesn't question whether the story is useful. It just accepts it. So if the story we're telling ourselves is that we're unlucky, unworthy, or doomed to fail, the brain will start scanning the world for proof. It will find ways to validate that belief. It's not lying to us, it's just trying to help us make sense of the world through the filter we gave it. But the good news is, we can change the filter. We can tell a new story. We can choose to act as if everything always works out for us, not because we have the evidence, but because we want to give our brain a better target, a new lens, a more useful truth. Now, I'm not talking about blind positivity or ignoring real problems. I'm talking about perspective, and I'm talking about choosing a story that empowers us to move, to try, to lead, to show up, even when the path is unclear. When we choose a better story, our brain starts to look for better answers. It gets curious instead of defensive, creative instead of defeated. I once worked with someone who had faced failure after failure in his startup journey. He was exhausted, burnt out. At one point he said, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. And I stopped him. I asked, what if the story you're telling isn't true? What if every setback is just preparing you for something better? And you just haven't seen it yet. He paused. That one question reframed everything. He didn't suddenly succeed overnight, but he began to show up differently. He asked better questions. He saw every challenge as part of the process, not a signal to quit. 6 months later, his third attempt caught traction. Not because he got smarter, but because he started telling a different story. One where failure wasn't final, one where everything was working for him, not against him. The brain believes the voice it hears most often. And that voice is usually our own. The way we talk to ourselves becomes the soundtrack of our lives. So when we choose to act as if things always work out, we're not pretending, we're programming. We're giving our minds a framework to respond with strength, not fear. This shift changes how we walk into meetings, how we deal with criticism, how we face rejection. If we tell ourselves that every rejection is redirection, then we no longer fear it. We embrace it. If we believe that every obstacle is an invitation to grow, we stop avoiding challenges and start seeking them out. The story gives the brain a job. Find the good. Find the lesson. Find the way forward. And because the brain wants to help, it starts delivering on that request. I think we often underestimate how much power we actually have over our own mindset. We wait for external validation to believe good things are coming, but the truth is, belief doesn't follow evidence, it creates it. When we believe that everything always works out, we act in ways that align with that story. We become more open, we build trust, we persevere longer, and those behaviors over time lead to outcomes that look a lot like things working out. Think about the leaders who've made the biggest impact in your life. Chances are they weren't the smartest or the most talented people in the room. But they had a way of making you believe, not in hype, not in fluff, but in possibility. They helped you see a version of the story where you mattered, where your contribution had meaning, where progress was possible. That's what great leaders do. They tell a better story, and they tell it so consistently that people begin to live into it. We can do that for ourselves too. We can become our own leader, not in some cliche self-help way, but in a grounded, practical way. When you wake up in the morning, you can choose what narrative you feed your mind. Is today a threat, or is it an opportunity? Is the challenge ahead a roadblock or a stepping stone? Are you unlucky, or are you in the middle of a great story that hasn't reached its turning point yet? The brain will follow your lead. It will believe what you repeat. So choose wisely. Speak to yourself the way you would to someone you care deeply about. Tell the story of resilience, of momentum, of trust. Act as if the best is yet to come. And not only will your mindset shift, but so will your actions, your energy, your results. Because in the end, the story we tell ourselves isn't just a reflection of who we are. It's a blueprint for who we're becoming. Tell a story worth believing and then live it. There's a common misunderstanding about optimism. People hear the word and immediately think of naivete, like optimism means ignoring reality or pretending everything is fine when it clearly isn't. But that's not optimism, that's denial. Real optimism is not about avoiding the hard things, it's about choosing how we face them. It's not wishful thinking, it's disciplined thinking. It's a choice to see what's possible, even when what's in front of you feels impossible. Discipline is the key word. Optimism is a practice, a mindset we commit to. And like anything worth doing, it takes effort, it takes intention, it takes work. Because the truth is, pessimism is easy. Cynicism is easy. Doubt comes naturally. The world constantly gives us reasons to believe things are falling apart, that we're running out of time, out of chances, out of hope. But optimism, that's something you have to choose, and you have to keep choosing it, especially when it's hardest. You can't just wait to feel optimistic. That's like waiting to feel strong before you go to the gym. It doesn't work that way. You build strength by showing up. You build optimism the same way, by training your mind to search for hope, to search for solutions, to stay grounded in the belief that there's always another step forward, even if it's small, even if it's messy, even if it doesn't look like progress yet. I've met leaders who carry this kind of optimism like armor. They walk into tough situations, not with arrogance or false cheer, but with a calm presence that says, we'll figure this out, we've got this. That kind of leadership creates stability. People gravitate toward it. Not because the leader has all the answers, but because they bring a sense of direction, of belief. That's the power of disciplined optimism. It gives people something to hold on to. It starts with a simple but powerful question. What's the most generous interpretation of this moment? What's the most hopeful version of what's happening? When everything feels like it's falling apart, ask yourself, what could this be teaching me? What might this be preparing me for? It's not about pretending things are easy. It's about finding meaning in the hard. That's the heart of optimism. It's choosing purpose over panic. People who act as if everything always works out for them are not blind to difficulty. They've just trained themselves